All right, we are going to learn the final 2 syllable types that you have not learned yet. We are going to learn those today in very quick succession. Do know that there is a video for this particular syllable type right here, consonant LE. If you go to the concepts manual, you will see a link to a video that Jen and I made of the lesson following the script. I think I might have tweaked the script a tiny bit since we recorded it, but no, that's fine. And so you do have other resources to look at. Of course, your concept manual is the number one that you should be paying attention to. All right, so let's do this. Here we go. Okay, so consonant LE syllable, also referred to a lot, including in your Bursch text in that reading chapter, referred to a final stable syllable is also what this is called. And there's some very important features of this particular syllable type that we're going to go over right now that are different from all the other 5 syllable types that we learned. So I'm going to do my best to model for you, because you are my group, right? You are my group. So I'm going to model as best I can the instructional cueing that I talked about in the small group lecture, where I'll say my turn, which means I'm going to explain or demonstrate something. You, as my student, are going to watch and listen. Then when I say your turn, you are going to respond. You're going to explain or demonstrate or do what I want you to do. And in this case, that's going to be typing into the chat. All right. So get ready to type into the chat when I cue you with your turn. Okay. All right. Number 1, every word either is a blank or has a blank. Think about that. I'm going to give you a hint. It's the same word in both blanks. So you are going to type, when I tell you, you're going to type one word into the chat, and it's going to be the word that goes in both blanks. Okay, your turn. I lost the chat completely. Okay, there it is. Base. Excellent job, guys. Thank you, everyone. Good job. Number 2, words that are just a base. Words that are just a base. We have a special term for that. They are called, your turn. Good job. Ooh. Dawn, what's a sick pull? Kidding. They are called simple. Yes. Okay. Number 3, words that have a base with another element attached. It could be another base element. It could be a prefix or a suffix. Words that have a base with another element. Think. What are those called? Your turn. Okay, good. Complex. Excellent. And number 4, we can classify base elements in terms of the pattern of vowels and consonants that we see. When we look at a word, we look at a base, we can look at the pattern of vowels and consonants. Those patterns that we see are given names. We call certain patterns, if we see this pattern, we call that this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's 2 words I'm looking for. Those are called what? Your turn. Ooh. Ah. Good, Laura. Alexa, thank you, Sarah. They are called syllable types, okay? So any base we can classify as a certain syllable type by looking at the letters in the base. We have to be looking at a word, a base, to know what syllable type it is. We do not know that just based on how it sounds. Okay. All right. Great job. Now my turn. Take a look, please, at the words in these different columns. You see, I have column A, column B, column C, column D. I want you to look at those and say them. Just read the words out loud. So you're looking at them and you're listening. I'll give you a moment to do that. And now I want you to tell me, or think first, wait till I cue you. What's the same about all of the words in column A? So look at column A. What is the same about all of those words in column A? Think. Okay, your turn. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Nice. So good. The most specific way of talking about all the thing they all have in common is that they have a closed syllable base element. Okay. Even backpacker has two bases, but they're both closed. Okay, very good. They have a closed syllable base. What about column B? What do all those words have in common? Your turn. Good job. They're all open syllable bases. That's right. Or syllables, whichever. Okay. C, what do those all have in common? Your turn. I think you can see where this is going. Yep, the base element is a vowel consonant E in all of those words. And then what about D? What do we see in column D? They have a base that has a vowel team. That's right. Okay, very good. Now, now look at all the words right there. There's one more thing that they actually all have in common. They are all words. Yes, thank you. Yes, love it. Love it. Shannon's like, I'm going to get my answer in first that I know is correct, and then I'm going to let someone else try to decipher further what else is going on with those. There's something else about them that is the same across all of them. And it has to do with how, if you say the words and you specifically just isolate the base element or one of the base elements, in the case of the backpacker. Oh, they're decodable. Love it, Andrea. Thinking deeply. Yes, they are. They all have a base, correct? They all have a base. And how many syllables is the base? All of those words has a base, at least one base. Thank you, Stephanie. Yes. All of these words have one syllable base elements. Very good. Now, let's look at column E, and I want you to listen. The words in column E are candle, dimple, and ruffle. Candle, dimple, and ruffle. What's the same about all the words in column E? I'm specifically asking you about what you hear. We're not looking at these words. So candle, dimple, ruffle, what is the same about what you hear? That's why there's an ear up there. You hear two syllables, and you hear an end. The ending has this ol sound. Yes, very good. Okay, cool. The answer I'm looking for here is that those are all two syllable base elements. So now we have a situation that we have not had before with our kids, and that is a two syllable base. Please be very clear about what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that we haven't studied two syllable words. you need to be very clear in your terminology and hear what I'm saying. A base is not the same as a word. Right? Because losses has 2 syllables, but it has 1 base. Okay? So that's our new thing we're learning here. And because we're learning about this new thing about more than 1 syllable in the base, we have to make sure that we can count syllables. Number 1, we have to be able to count syllables. And you introduced that a long time ago in the in the universal lessons. We talked about counting syllables. We've talked about counting syllables when we talk about S or ES, right? And even sometimes we talk about counting syllables because sometimes there's another suffix that can sometimes add a syllable, ed, right? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Like rented has an ed with another syllable, spoken syllable, but packed, P-A-C-K-E-D, does not. But we've also talked about syllables in compounds, right? Just because a word is usually a compound has at least 2 syllables. Well, it does for sure because it's 2 bases. So we've done this counting thing before, but what we haven't done, so anyway, candle, 2 syllables, right? We can show that with syllable squares. Candle, the syllables in candle are candle. Dimple, 2, right? Ruffle, 2. Okay, so we should be cool with that. But now we need to find something called the stressed syllable. Words in English that are more than 1 syllable, well, even 1 syllable words can either carry stress in a sentence or not. For example, the word of is a function word. It often is unstressed. It oftentimes just gets hooked on to whatever other word is next to it. So function words, unstressed usually. That's why the word like a dog, a cat, a desk, that's a function word. We don't stress it. We give it that schwa sound. It's not a dog, a cat. We rarely in actual spoken English we rarely say a. Okay? So we know a little bit about stress from talking about content and function words, but now we're going to talk about stress within a 2-syllable word. So the way to do that is to either get the word in trouble or to do what I say is called use earmuffs. Now we've talked about these before a little bit. We talked about whale talk for counting syllables, right? Say it with your mouth closed, like candle. But whale talk doesn't always tell you which one is stressed. Whale talk is good for counting, not always effective for finding stress. This finding a stress syllable, or identifying a stress syllable, I should say, is going to be hard for you as an adult. It's hard for most adults I talk to. It was hard for me when I first was learning about it because it's such a natural, just everybody who's a native English speaker who doesn't have any kind of pathology going on with their speaking automatically knows how to stress syllables in words. You know when you hear it wrong, right? The word is not syllable, it's syllable. So you know very much unconsciously, you know about syllable stress. And if you didn't, it would be very clear to anybody listening to you that you didn't. The difficulty you and your student are going to have is identifying a stress syllable, actually pointing it out, calling it out, right? So we have to kind of say words in a little bit of a distorted way, or say them in a way that's going to kind of almost over enunciate in order to really see the contrast better, because it's really just, remember we talked a little bit about this for compounds, okay? Even within a compound word, one of those bases will get the primary stress, even though the other base also carries its full vowel sound. So backpack, right? I'm not going to go on a backpacking trip. I'm going to go backpacking. So remember that the reason we though started with compounds is because both bases still carry their full vowel sound. We don't have to deal with schwa. Those days are over. We have to deal with schwa now. So schwa is what happens in that unstressed syllable. So we have to make these considerations when we're spelling the word. This is where this comes into play, is mostly with spelling. So get the word in trouble means I'm going to say the word as if I was mad at it or it just did something that it shouldn't have done. Like I have a dog named Sadie, and Sadie sometimes is naughty, and I have to say, Sadie. So when Sadie's in trouble, that's how I say her name. I'm not like, oh, Sadie, my baby. Nope, I say, Sadie. So when you get the word in trouble, any word, not just someone's name, it becomes clearer which syllable is stressed. And it's the one that you say with more power, with a fuller vowel sound. It's kind of hard to describe, sometimes with a higher pitch. This is how that sounds. It's a very subtle difference, but it is there. And so you can get any word in trouble. So we can get the word candle in trouble. If candle was in trouble, would I say candle? Or would I say candle? I would say candle, right? Not candle. Same thing with dimple and ruffle. Okay, using earmuffs is the thing that we did to find voiced and unvoiced. Remember when we did voiced, unvoiced pairs and how your vocal cords will vibrate more for a voice sound? Sometimes doing the earmuffs, which means cover your ears and say the word, right? So if I said candle, sometimes saying the word, not even getting it in trouble, just saying the word, can you go light the candle? Sometimes kids can hear, or people, adults too, can hear that stressed syllable if they do earmuffs. Sometimes not. Again, you have to find the strategy that works for you, and you have to lead the student through some strategies that work for them. Clapping is not an effective strategy. Nor is elongating each syllable. That is not effective for finding stress. If I say candle, okay, I can count the syllables that way. Candle. But I said both syllables with the same amount of time and the same amount of force. So do not over enunciate both syllables like that. That's why getting it in trouble is a much more effective strategy, because you naturally say the word faster when you're getting it in trouble. If I'm calling Stella to dinner and she's not in trouble, I might say Stella. But if Stella is in trouble, I'm going to say Stella. Right? Do you see the difference? Hear the difference, I should say. You can't see the difference. Yes, Laura. Yeah, you're right. Announcements were going on. Yeah, calling it to dinner is not effective for syllable stress. Because when you call something to dinner, you naturally elongate all of the syllables. Especially if it's a 2-syllable word. Stella. Now, you might hear a different pitch right there, right? Stella. I did the stel part higher pitched, but I've found in my experience that has been not as effective as getting it in trouble. So the way that we show a stressed syllable then is to push the syllable square further up, right? So remember we had them side by side. Candle, I can hear too. It's not candle. Nope. It's a candle, 2 syllable squares. And then when I find the one that's stressed, I push it up. Okay, that's how we show stressed syllable. And so I want you to notice something about the second syllable of all of these words, we have candle, dimple, ruffle. So we have dull, pull, full. What we're hearing in all of those words and that we're trying to visually show right here is a final unstressed syllable with a consonant sound. That's why you see the angle, I'm sorry, the slash brackets. The slash brackets around the word consonant means it's a consonant sound, and followed by an ul sound, right? So we hear dull, pull, full. And you can even feel that in your throat, that you're kind of almost like swallowing that vowel sound. It's a very weak reduced vowel sound. Dull, pull, full. And yet it is a syllable. Okay. So what are we going to see? Here are now look, now we're into a visual, right? Everything that we did up until this point was auditory. And now look, here's our visual. What do we notice about how we spell these words? What do we see in these words? Type it in the chat. In other words, your turn. Very good. This is also what your kids are going to say. So your student might say, well, I see an LE. And that would not be wrong. That is absolutely what they all share the LE at the end, right? But the other thing we're going to point out to them is that they all also share a consonant. Now the consonant might be different, but it is a consonant before the LE. So what we want them to see is that it's a consonant LE. Okay? Any consonant and an LE. Hence our syllable type. Okay? We see a consonant.
And that's really important to note because that is the syllable. That's the final syllable. And then Kara's about to show you, but notice there's a closed syllable that's the first syllable. And you can see that you've got a vowel, then a consonant that will close the syllable. Can and dim and rough. So very important to note that it's a consonant LE syllable.
Absolutely. It's not an LE syllable. It's a consonant LE. Okay. And there it is on your, from your word detective notebook. The syllable type is called consonant LE. We hear a consonant sound plus an ul sound, right? A k ul or a d ul, right? In a final unstressed syllable. That's what we hear. And then what do we see? We see a consonant plus an L and an E. And we're going to talk about how to code that in just a second. But just so you know, this is what you always go back. There's always something to refer to in the word detective notebook when you teach something, right? There's also a concept card a lot of times, or some other kind of card that goes with it. Okay. So coding these words. So let's walk through this a minute here. So that was our discovery. By the way, that's all scripted out for you. All of that discussion that we just had is laid out for you in the concept manual, and there's a video you can watch. But what's our first step? When we've come across a word we do not know. What is step number 1? Spot the vowels. Yes, so spot and dot, there's our 2 vowel letters, right? We can literally see those letters. And we know that they are vowels, and so we dot them. Then we're going to, then we're going to do what? What do we do next, actually? After spot and dot. What do we do next? At this point with our student, there's something that we need to do. We box any affixes that we see. And at this point, we've only taught suffixes. So we could just say, do you see any suffixes that we've learned? No, no suffixes. So after that, then we're going to underline and circle consonants in between the vowels, right? Okay, so I've done that. I see an N, a D, and an L. They each get their own underline. Now what am I going to do? What's my next step? I'm going to figure out where to divide. I find the pattern and I divide. Now, question for you. When I have multiple medial consonants, if there's only two consonants there, where do I divide? If there were only two consonants, where is the division usually happening? Yep, between the two consonants. Do I have only two consonants here? Nope, I got three. What's my rule for how to know where to divide three consonants? Up until now, what have they been taught to do? Yes, Laura, good way to put it. Think about what likes to be together, right? What are those clusters, those consonants that like to cluster together? Now, here's what I want you to notice, guys. I see a couple of consonants here that usually like to cluster together. An N and a D, right? So here's what we need to make sure our kids understand. There's an overriding division that's going to override that convention. And it's going to be that when I see a consonant LE, I'm going to bracket the last three. So even though normally I would have kept N and D together in any other syllable that I've studied, right? That ND is like a cluster. But wait, I see a consonant LE, so I bracket the last three, and that's what that is. So notice this new thing here is this bracket, this special way of coding this. Notice that it just automatically tells you where to divide. I see a consonant LE, I bracket the last three, meaning that is now a syllable. I've done my division. I've noticed this thing that happens a whole lot, and that's called a consonant LE, and I'm going to bracket that off to this side. It's not a suffix. It is not meaningful. It's a spoken syllable. Okay, so then I'm going to code the vowels in each syllable. Just a second, Andrea, I'll come right back to you. I'm going to code this. Now look, I've got a closed syllable over here, short vowel sound, and I'm going to do what to that E? I'm going to slash it. It is a final silent E. It's not, its only job in this word is to make that a written syllable. I want my reader to know that this word has two syllables. How do I do that? Well, I better give them two vowel letters, right? To look at. So now I'm going to scoop and mark stress. So here's can, dole. Do I say can, dole? When I say this word, do I say can, dole? Nope, I got to find the stress. So do I say candle or do I say candle? Well, I say candle. So here's my another new learning for my student here, if I haven't talked about this before, is to code and mark that stress syllable. Now, in consonant LE words, that is going to be the stress syllable, the one that comes before the consonant LE. I still want you to go through the process of making that mark. And I want the student to prove to you how they know that is the stressed syllable. They can get the word in trouble, right? You can try to stress the other syllable if you're not sure, like I did. Candle. Do we say candle? No. Okay, do we say candle? Is that a word that's in your spoken vocabulary? Oh yeah, it's a candle. Yeah, I know what a candle is. Okay. This is a complex for some kids and even adults, new sort of topic here. So you might find yourself slowing down with your student. In fact, this lesson is broken into 2 guided discoveries. You will notice in the concept manual, we teach reading these words one day and we teach spelling them the next day. It's one of those deals. Okay. We did that for suffix S as well, because there's a whole lot of stuff here. And you, again, using your professional judgment, you will see that we've clumped all of the consonant LEs like, into like those 2 lessons. If you need to slow down and give your student more time, that is what you do. Just like with floss rule words, right? Some of you could just teach F, L, S, and Z in the same lesson. Some of you could not. It depends on your student. The concept manual and that scope and sequence we've given you is a guide. It is not a Bible that you are meant to follow with exact precision. That would make this not an individualized kind of thing. Okay, the whole point of this is that you learn how to make these instructional decisions for your student sitting in front of you. And Jen and I can't tell you what those should be. We tell you to look at data. We tell you to, that's why you take notes. That's why you take data. That's how you know how fast you can move. Okay, Andrea.
Okay. So we like at my school in my classroom, I've split syllables for years now. Is it okay to teach them all this part? Like I usually have them, okay, the very first thing we look for after we spot and dot our vowels is there an E at the end? So that covers 2 things. It covers, okay, is it a silent E as far as does it make a vowel say its name? Or do I have a consonant LE? So I have them look for those 2 things.
Okay.
If it is a consonant LE, then I always tell them count back 3 and split. Can I still do that and then just have them use the bracket instead?
Okay, great question. And yes, you can. My only thought about that is, how does a student know if an E is syllabic or not until they read the whole word? Like if you say that you're gonna, when in the sequence that you just described, the second step after dotting was taking a look at that E and then asking them, oh, well, does that say a sound or doesn't it? Because if it does, I can't slash it, right? Okay, but I don't know that until I read the whole word. You know you see what I'm saying? Like it's a little bit. Now, 99% of the time, the final E by itself is silent. So if your students want to just continue on that path and realizing that it's not always that way, like in recipe, that's not a silent E, right? But most of the time you are correct. A final silent E, a final single E is almost always non-syllabic. It's silent, right? It's not whatever. So just with that caveat is all I'm saying for you, something to think about, right? Then I'm fine. And I have also done the count back 3 thing. That's another strategy. And you said they circle it or instead of.
No, that's just where we split it. Like we would just do it, just divide.
Okay.
But we can add the bracket. It wouldn't be a problem.
I mean, a dividing line is a similar idea. Yeah, no, so that's, that's okay. I'm definitely not going to ask you to change something that's been successful for you. I would never ask you to do that. And if that's what they're doing, if that's what the regular ed teachers are teaching, that's not wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is like, they're not teaching any of that. So anyway.
Oh, well, then there you go.
I was on an island for years, but it's
if even if you're just doing it and that's been helpful and successful for you, I have no problem with that. You will see other programs that use the circling and the count back 3 and all that. Yeah.
And for the most part, you're not going to be giving students at this level cafe or recipe anyway. So
exactly.
back the E at the end, it's pretty much gonna be silent unless of course it says function words like she, we, me, be. But anyway, I think you're
Exactly.
pretty safe at this point. But Kara always makes such a great point that there may be an exception later on.
Yeah, you just don't want to have to walk back. And it's all about how you present it, right? You can use the word, usually a final E is silent. And that is completely true. There's nothing. So then later, it's not an exception for you to say, and when you see cafe or recipe or whatever, you know, well, I said usually, right? And E is silent. And certainly if E is the only letter, if E is the only vowel letter in a word, it has to be syllabic. He, she, be, me, like, you know, there's no like choice there. So okay. Okay, guys, now we need to talk about this particular other kind of consonant LE word that happens a lot. And that's when we see doubled medial consonants, but we only hear one sound. This is not the word nibble, right? So what we're going to do is we'll go through the same thing here. I see a consonant LE. Okay, I'm going to bracket the last three. I'm going to code my vowels. That makes this nib, right? And that makes this silent. So bull. So what might happen here? Here's what might happen. Your student might go nibble. This is where we need to talk to them about. In fact, this is not the first time that we've seen double consonants in a word, right? Where else have we seen double consonants? In words like toss, bell, stuff, rock. It's not bellala or tossissa. It's the same idea here. We are needing that other written consonant to show our reader that the first vowel is short. Otherwise, it might look like nibble, which isn't an actual word in English, but that's what is happening with that double consonant. So you're just going to want to make sure that you, when the kids are reading, that might happen, especially if the word is not in their spoken vocabulary. It's like if they don't know that nibble is a word, they might say nibble. But if they know nibble is a word, then it usually takes care of itself. But I'm just saying, beware of that and be ready to deal with it. Now, we are not going to ask them at this point to spell nibble words. So you're going to hear us talking about this word nibble a lot, and you need to know what we mean. We mean consonant LE words that have a double medial consonant. This is what we're talking. So like there's lots and lots of words. They're all listed in your, not all listed, but a whole bunch of them are listed in your controlled word list resource. Okay. But
I'll
we're
just give
only
you a
going
few
to
real fast. Oh, sorry. Hobble, puzzle, giggle, juggle. You
bubble,
will not
bubble.
be
Yes.
spelling those. Yeah.
Yes. We're not spelling them. Okay. We can teach them to spell these words, but we're not going to do that right now. That'll come later as a way to contrast words that don't have a double, like in the word cable, right? Cable, C-A-B-L-E. It doesn't need a double B because the A is long, but that's a whole separate group of words that we'll tackle that later. Okay. So reading nibble words only, not spelling. Okay, so here's how we spell these words. Not nibble words, of course, but any other word that's a consonant LE with a closed first syllable. I might say simple, simple. Is it simple or complex? It's simple. Okay, is it a function or a content word? Content word, right? I can tap the sounds, name the graphemes, write and name. What's the word? Now, what are they possibly going to do when they get to the p-ul? They're not going to remember the E. This is where you need to remind them, what does every syllable have to have? Or almost always, right? A vowel letter. Now, that might be too hard for kids, so you might need to break up that two-syllable word into its actual syllables. So that's how this looks. I would say, is it content or function word? Content. How many syllables? Because guys, remember now, they actually are spelled. This is the first time they're spelling a base that has 2 syllables. I'm not getting out a word sum. This is not a base with a suffix. This is a 2-syllable base. So what do? I get out my syllable squares. Right? Simple. Now I'm going to tap the sounds just in the first syllable. Name the graphemes, S-I-M. Write in name, S-I-M. Second syllable, pull. Tap the sounds, P-ul. Name the graphemes, P-L-E. Again, this is not new. They've announced a silent E before. Where have they announced it before? In vowel consonant E words, like home, H-O-M-E, right? And then I write a name. Notice I'm not putting a space between the sim and the pull. It is one word. Your student might try to do that. They might put a space. And then what's the word? Simple. Okay. So let's just, here's why we don't do nibble words. Puddle is an example of a nibble word. Because what's going to happen when they get to this part? They're going to go p-a-d-ul. Or they're going to go 2 syllables, p-a-d-ul. How are they going to know to double that D? They're not. So we are just not dealing with those words for spelling yet. Okay? So this is your new concept, right? In the new concept word list, you can include any consonant LE words where you've taught that that ending, that which I'll show you in a second. There's a whole set of concept cards for this now, keyword and sound cards, I should say. All right. Actually, the link for the keyword and sound cards for the ones you don't have yet that you'll need to print for these is right there in the concept manual. So there's like 5 of them on the page. I think you need to print like 2 pages of them. You will include nibble words in reading. Okay. PG mapping, nothing new for this concept in PG mapping. Okay. There's nothing you need to do in PG mapping that's different. In spelling and dictation, you will only include words with a closed first syllable. That's all we're teaching right now. Okay. And no nibble words in spelling or dictation. And then in oral reading, of course, you can include, again, any closed syllable, first syllable closed consonant LE words, and you can include nibble words. Remember, they can read nibble words. We're just holding off on spelling them. Here's what those cards look like. Again, you can find a link to them in the concept manual when you scroll down to the consonant LE lesson. Okay. And the concept manual walks you through the whole thing. Here's an example of the word list I was talking about. Here they are. This is right there in your word list. I didn't show you all the nibble words, but do you see how it clearly says reading only? Okay. Any questions? Okay, good, because we're moving right along to the next thing, which is your last syllable type that you're going to learn. The last one the one we haven't talked about yet, which is vowel R. It's the vowel R syllable type. It's when we see a vowel followed by an R. The vowel sound is affected by the R. So it's not long and it's not short. Sometimes you'll hear people say controlled by the R. You'll hear people call this a bossy R. If that's the terminology that y'all are using where you are, that's fine. What the kid needs to understand is that we're going to call it a vowel R because that is literally what it is. It's a vowel followed by an R. So E-R-I-R-U-R-O-R-A-R. And we're going to code it with a circle, right? Because those two things go together. So for example, I might say, today we're going to learn a new syllable type. This is a fern. Some people like to have ferns planted around their house, right? It's a plant with no flowers. That's what a fern is. So the syllable of the word fern has 3 phonemes. The vowel phoneme is What's the vowel phoneme? I'm going through this quickly. Here's how we spell fern. F-E-R-N. What grapheme did I use to represent the vowel What grapheme did I use? Type it in the chat. What grapheme represents Thank you, very good. ER is the grapheme that represents Okay, and so in the word fern, is the vowel E representing the sound E or E? Those are the 2 sounds you know for E. It's not representing E or E in this word, right? It's the R is affecting the way we say the E. So it's saying So what do we do? Oops. There's supposed to be a circle right there. Sorry. So here is fern. Oh, how do we code 2 letters that represent 1 phoneme? How do we code that? Oh, with a circle. This is all written out for you in the lesson. Here's your ER card, fern, Oops. Here's how we code words now with an same as always. We spot and dot our vowels, right? That's always how we start. We box any prefixes or suffixes. Don't see any here. Circle and underline. So notice I can circle my ER. That's the new thing that I should notice. My eyes should be looking for, just like my eyes should be looking for SHs and THs and all that kind of stuff. Now I see something else I just learned how to circle, ER. I've got 2 medial consonants. Where can I divide between them? Again, this is all things I've already learned how to do right here. Code my vowels, number, scoop my syllables, number. Is it number? No, it's number. I'm going to mark stress. Why? Because this is a 2-syllable base, right? Number is a base. It is simple. It is just a base. It just so happens to have 2 syllables. Okay, same thing here. What's my rule? I keep consonant clusters together. The consonant cluster I notice right here is ST. So that's where I'm going to try to divide first. So what do I get? Lobster. Lobster. So notice we're building on things the kid has already been taught. The new thing here is that ER that we're circling. So notice it could be in a 1-syllable word like fern, or it could be in a 2-syllable word like lobster or number. Okay. I want you to look at the words number and lobster here. And the thing that is the same, oops, sorry. There is something that's the same about number and lobster. What is the same about number and lobster that you see? Type it in the chat. What is the same? What is the same in the words in the words? Yeah, they are words. I was going to say the number and lobster. They all have a final ER. Both of them have a final ER. Good. Question for you. My turn. Do number and lobster mean the same thing or almost the same thing? Are they related in meaning at all? No, that's not a trick. That was not a trick question. They are not related. They have something similar about them, this ER thing, but they don't mean the same thing. Just going to come back to that. So I want you to take a look at this list, and I want you to look at it as if it is a review list. Okay, let's say I just taught ER last session, and now I'm going to review ER. What do all of those words have in common? What do they all have? Yep, the only thing that's the same, of course, is we're focusing in on the ER, right? That's why they all are in this list together. That's a homogeneous list of words with the grapheme ER. I want to ask you, what do two of them have? Two of them have, yeah. Two of them have a suffix, right? Inserted and blisters.
We were reminding everybody that they do need to make sure they have two complex words in their review list, like inserted and blisters.
Some people are forgetting that that's necessary and they're losing a couple points on
Yep,
their observations, but more importantly, their students are not having the opportunity to practice reading those words.
exactly. That's exactly why we're talking about this right now. The whole point of these questions for you right now is to realize if you're not putting at least two complex words in every review list, you're missing points, and more importantly, you're missing, yes, your kids are missing the opportunity to practice boxing suffixes and noticing them. Okay, very good. Could all of these words be used for spelling? Are there any words here that we would not have the kids spell for some reason? And if there is a reason, if there is a word that you think should not be for spelling, what is it? Good question, Laura. So Laura said, I was wondering about perch, P-E-R-C-H, if we haven't done TCH. Do we need to have taught TCH for them to spell perch correctly? No, because perch doesn't have a TCH. And the only way that they know how to spell the ch sound right now is CH. So that should be the only way that they spell it. Now, I know that kids know about TCH, even if we haven't explicitly taught them. So might you have a student that spells perch with a TCH? Yes, you might. Again, because they just have come in with that knowledge or they think they have. But really, what does that tell you? They don't really know when to use a CH and a TCH. Well, more importantly, they don't know when to use a TCH. There's literally one time you use a TCH, one set of circumstances. Any other time you use a CH. So the default really is to use a CH, except under these very small circumstances, right? Which is, I see one vowel letter, it has a short sound, and then I immediately hear ch afterwards. That's the only time I use TCH. So great question. Any others you're wondering about? So you're right, all of these can be used for spelling. All of them can be used for spelling, okay? here is your PG mapping, right? So now we see that, so the good thing to note here, everybody, ER is the default spelling for the sound Now, we all know that there's more than one way to spell There's IR, there's ER. I'm sorry, there's UR and IR. There's also AR and OR actually can also spell but in a stressed base element, the default spelling for is going to be ER. So new for PG mapping, say what can spell Your student might say R, right? Are they probably going to say R? They might. So you need to say, you need to specify then the vowel What can spell the vowel phoneme Okay. Same thing here for spelling. If it's a 2-syllable word like lobster, you can do where they can, if your student can tap and remember, this is a big cognitive load for some kids. If they can tap all the sounds and name all the graphemes, that's fine. That might not be the case. And that's when you do the whole 2-syllable thing. Remember we did this for consonant LE? Lob, L-O-B, lob, L-O-B, L-O-B, stir, S-T-E-R, S-T-E-R, what's the word? Lobster. So you're taking what they learned in consonant LE and just now putting it here in these words, okay? Remember, you do this procedure with 2-syllable bases. All right, we're moving right along, guys. We just covered consonant LE and we covered vowel team. I'm sorry, we covered consonant LE syllable type, final stable syllable, and we covered vowel R. I'm going to just stop the recording because those two things belong together as syllable types.